I think, 4 o'clock, and we shall start. Well, hello, everybody. I'm May Pettigrew, and I'm Vice President of EES, and I am so pleased to welcome you all. And of course, in particular, I'm pleased to welcome, and we're honoured to have Nikki Bowman and talking with Ian Goldman today on indigeneity and decolonisation. Now, I hope and I know that this talk will speak to all of us, for we're all a community gathered at this event today, and we're all seeking, I know, as this community here, to respect the land, the diversity of people, and acknowledge our own complex histories, those histories in which we are embedded. In the case of Nikki, as you know, is a Lenape Mohican from the Stockbridge Munsee peoples, and that's lands from Pennsylvania right up to the Hudson River. And on behalf of EES, I would like, in appreciation, to acknowledge Nikki. I say to you, you and your First Nation peoples, and the family from the ancestral homelands from which you speak to us today. Ian, you're from South Africa, lands also predated and peoples oppressed, and I would like to honour the original inhabitants of those lands too, and indeed all lands of this earth where people have been brutally exploited, killed in the pursuit of power and wealth of elites. And of course, we're not seeing any let up in that in these terrible times today. Nikki, thank you for your encouragement to do that modest land acknowledgement, because doing something that puts you out of your comfort zone means that you're then forced to reflect, and I will enjoy continuing reflecting and discussing with you. Now, before I pass on to Ian and Nikki, just a couple of procedural suggestions. You've got the chat function, use it whenever you want. It will be it'll be recorded, and Nikki and Ian will be able to see it. And then at the end, we've got about 10 minutes for questions. So pose your questions in the chat box, and then I'll curate them. I'll forward some to Ian and Nikki, or I hope to be able to unmute some of you so that we can have an interactive discussion. Over to you, Ian and Nikki.
So hi, everybody. Good to be with you, and great to have this opportunity to have a conversation with Nikki, both of us board members in the International Evaluation Academy. And what I'm just to introduce what we're going to do, we're going to do the essence of this indigenous way of thinking and being is integrating head, heart, and hand. So we're going to do a mindfulness exercise, and then we're going to talk about our origins, because again, what is key in this decolonization and indigeneity discussion is being grounded in the place, in the nature, in the people of where we come from. So we're going to talk about our origin stories, and then I'm going to ask Nikki to reflect on lessons from the special edition of the Journal of Multidisciplinary Evaluation on decolonization and evaluation that she and Bageli Chalisa led on. And then we're going to move to thinking about how we can bring indigenous ways of thinking and being to wider society. And then there'll be an opportunity at the end, as May said, for questions and answers, and please put them in the chat. And May will manage that Q&A so we can operate in a bit more of a head and heart space during that process. So first of all, I want to invite you that the essence of this, the message that we hope to be sharing with you and exploring with you is about the integrating of head, heart, and hand. So I'd like to invite you to close your eyes and feel yourself in the space in which you're in, and to feel your feet on the floor, on the soil, in the land, the soil beneath your feet, being grounded in this space, and to feel the legs which bear you, to feel any tension that's in those legs, and release that tension. To feel your thighs, and if you're probably sitting, so sitting on the chair, sitting on the earth, that connection with earth. Feeling your back, releasing any tension in your back. Feeling your shoulders, tension in your shoulders. Feeling your neck, releasing any tension in your neck. Feeling your head, releasing the tension in your face, letting your jaw open slightly, your mouth open slightly, releasing the tension in your forehead. Being in this moment to explore with us how we build on where we all are in the world. Thank you. And I'm going to start off just as, in a sense, I'm starting off as sort of hosting Nikki, and Nikki will then end up. And just to tell you a little bit about my origin story, because we all have complex histories. And my history, my family come originally, I'm Jewish. My family come from Lithuania and Latvia. This is my great-grandfather who came from Lithuania in the 1880s. He was fleeing Russia, which was part of Russia, where a Jewish son had to spend 20 years in the army. And he escaped with his younger sister. He changed his name to his mother's name to avoid the draft, and he left. And he came to South Africa, and then he became a settler in South Africa. And these are my parents. And just by the way, yes, the village that he came from now has a population of about 21,000. And in that village, about 10,000 Jews were killed in the Second World War. So that what we're seeing in the world today is this reflection of this intergenerational trauma, this trauma which is being revisited as people do not resolve their trauma and then express it on others. And this is my father and my mother and my grandmother. My father, my parents were both secular Jewish. My father, an anti-Zionist, organizing for liberation and social justice in South Africa. He was politically involved and he was jailed in 1960. We went into exile, a comfortable exile in the UK, I have to say. And I returned to South Africa after democracy. My mother, a potter, a psychotherapist, working with group processes and living in Cape Town. And by the way, this is a picture that my father did in jail. His spare time occupation was an artist. And this is the area I'm privileged to live in Cape Town. And in the San language, which is the original language here, Cape Town's name is Hui Gaeb, which loosely means where the cloud meets. I live in this small town called Simonstown, which, as in the rest of South Africa, black people were removed during apartheid. And here is a memory in Simonstown to some of the people that were forcibly removed in 1968. What Wachabiki means wait a bit. So, and for me, you know, the power of my parents, the social justice that my father fought for, that my mother fought for, but in individual and group processes, is expressed in a commitment to a just transition. And that's what a socially just transition to climate and ecosystems health. And this is what attracted me to be part of the Academy, which is committed to transforming society and the contribution that evaluation can make. And with that, I want to hand over to Nikki for her origin story.
Palamausi ni Deshinzi, Wichiwinu, Kanewak ni non GIE, Shana, Wisconsin, Walk, Lenapehoking, Anishi Kishalamokwe, Ni Mubausa Wakanam, Walk, Wilit ni Alagomatit, Anishik, ni Joseph. Anishik. And that was my way to decolonize language and speak my first language, which I wasn't born with, which is Lenape. I am both Stockbridge Muncie stands for in Mohican. I'm Mohican, so not the last of them, and I'd like to say Mohican. I am an auntie. I am a citizen of the Mohican Nation. The Muncie dialect is what I was speaking, so I'm also Delaware Indians is what they called us, because we live by the Delaware River on the east side of Turtle Island, aka North America. But instead of Delaware, traditionally we say Lenape. I come to you as an auntie, as well as somebody who sits in this space of evaluation. My work comes out of my office here in Shawano, Wisconsin. That's the heart of Turtle Island, I'm told by elders, at Bowman Performance Consulting, and at University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I function as an associate scientist and evaluator. And so I'll just quickly, we'll just pop through these slides. I wanted to just talk today about, you're gonna hear a lot of little lessons tied in, and part of our origin story comes with the faceless. You'll see a lot of the artwork, a lot of this is original artwork. And there's lots of stories that go with this, lots of things that apply to academia and life. I like to say my origin stories are my roots. So whether if I was an evaluator, if I was a logger, an accountant, whatever, I would carry these roots with me, and it really guides me and gives me direction depending on what way the winds are blowing above ground. And so the faceless is to remind us to be in elokion, in service to others, and to walk with cultural and academic humility. And maybe the next time we visit, I'll share the story behind the faceless people or dolls, Cornhusk dolls. On the next slide, you'll see that this is my origin story. There was a tree on the first slide, and it means that I have the medicines of the earth and the sky, because Indigenous people are the children of Mother Earth, or the grandchildren. The sun and the moon made a baby. Grandfather Sun and grandmother Moon made a baby called Mother Earth. And we are the children of Mother Earth, and we are here to remember to be caretakers and not takers of all things seen and unseen, of humans and non-humans and all of our relatives. So again, you'll see it's not all about me, that person in the picture. It's about how we walk in a good way with Walit Nialago Matit, the good medicine. And that's what I said in my prayer when I started, that we would walk in that good way. My origin story, I'm like, how am I going to speak to this European eval audience? Well, I won't go into the whole detail, but the doctrine of discovery began with the church and the monarchy over there. And basically anyone who wasn't a Christian, frankly, was considered a heathen or not human. And the church and the state worked very hard to then have conquest. And so over here in the United States, we talk a lot about rescinding the doctrine of discovery. And this, in the global North context, is a very important concept and policy that still is part of what harms us to these days in the modern days. We'll go to the next slide. This is my actual route of, this is our Trail of Tears. We started out in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. We also were up in Ontario. And when the conquerors came, we sort of scattered. So we have 7 different communities in the United States that are recognized traditionally and, federally or by the community that we belong to. And I'm in the one where it says Shawano County Reservation in the state of Wisconsin. It's the furthest dot left. So we ran the furthest. All right. And so part of the origin story, that I'm bringing to you is if we know where we came from, and through this process of planning, honestly, we kind of are figuring it out together. And I want to thank EES for bringing me here, Ian for planning with me, May for being open to the land acknowledgement and showing us we don't have to be perfect. We're just in process. And that's the human experience. And then to the tech folk who help me with all of this stuff, and my team back here who make sure that I'm ready to go. So I'm ready when you are, Ian.
Great. So So let's move now to the journal, and this really powerful set of papers there. So evaluation has a potential role to play, not in a predefined version, but deep learning about whether interventions or systems are working or not and why. This powerful body of work that you have overseen and driven is very diverse and challenging. What emerged for you as the key themes for transforming evaluation in editing this special edition?
Well, once I got over the star shock of working with Bagali and, you know, the folks that helped make this happen, she's one of my sheroes. I think that we found out, you know, pretty quickly that when colonization happens, we have a lot of shared human experience. So where's one of the teachings we have, medicine wheel, 4 directions, 4 colors of humankind, but we're all in this circle together. It's not top down, and that's for a reason. And we may be a little more shy or uncomfortable and are further out, but we're wandering our way in and together. And so I think I want to say the process part was something that revealed a lot, and being able to have very rich conversations, you know, with the editorial team, and honestly back and forth between reviewers and with authors that submitted. One of the key themes in decolonization was how much of that happened so long ago, actually, if you trace it back, still affects our policy and our practice, our cognitive frames, and the way that we do things today. I can't obviously speak as eloquently as my sister Bagali, but I can say, you know, for me, one of the things that really popped out is, how do we talk about First Nations, right, and Indigenous people, not just the culture and the language, but the nationhood, this nationhood that 1,206 First Nations governments hold. And you'll see in the Global South as well as in Hawaii and other places, that, for instance, the Maori will make mountains and rivers, give them human status, so they get human protections, you know what I'm saying, so that the natural resources can't be harmed. So it's, you know, I think under this umbrella of decolonization, it was really beautiful to read all the papers and the different ways that folks are decolonizing their mind, decolonizing systems. Like, there is a beautiful just array of awesomeness, of, sorry for lack of a better word or more scholarly word, that's going on out there. So shared experience, how do policy and resources impact the work that we do? And a lot of this work was grassroots. We all strive for it to be more systemic in nature, more institutionalized, but there are a lot of beautiful grassroots activities going on, and you can tell based on the authors, if some of them were early grassroots or some of them had been at it long enough that it was a sort of a much bigger, scaling up, if you will, of the decolonization activities going on.
So let's go to the medicine wheel, because I really enjoyed reading that. I mean, in the O'Connor article, for example, where she talks about entering through the different doors. Can you talk a bit about the different doors and what those different doors mean, and how we might apply that in an evaluation context?
Okay, I have a slide. Do you want to go to slide 17?
I'll do that. Hang on a second.
There's 4 doors or 7 doors, depending on the way you look. A lot of my writing, and not every Indigenous nation has, culturally, they don't use a medicine wheel. But the point here for me is, this is what has come up for almost 30 years of going to culture and language camp, being in ceremony, riding with elders while we go get groceries or their medicines, you know, just helping out. That's what my Fridays are for. I try to focus my Fridays on community and cultural things. And then I usually come back to the office and I'm inspired, you know, that's what sort of helps get me into the groove. Which, for a pause, I want to say why Ian started out, we can't be at our best when we're always tired. And this hustle society and this perfectionist society is part of, you know, how white supremacy or colonization gets in our spaces that we work. So I really appreciate that we started with breathing and grounding. And if you look at this, one more. It's we can talk about this. There's another slide too. Number 17 is the 7 directions, but
Okay.
so yeah,
sorry.
one more. So if you look at it's the one with the red, white, and blue and just the tree. Red, white, and yellow.
Is it this
Stop,
one?
right there, yes. So this is the big picture. Thank you, Ian. The 4 directions, the eastward direction, we talk about culture and language, being a good relative, having a connection. The southern direction, this is just me framing it and how I use it in evaluation, is about policy and structure and design. The western direction, in the West, we have the tests, is what the elders say. So this is about formative evaluation. It may be about tinkering and figuring things out, piloting things. We have to find balance. And so it's okay to say, this didn't work. How do we go back and sort of refine or drop something or add something new? The North is white because it is for the elders. That's where the wisdom sits, the emerging or best practices. And then we also talk about the earth direction, which is grounding. It will tell you what your roots are. It tells you what your values and your ethics are. The northern, the skyward direction is really you thinking about what your ancestors have done. It may be spirituality. When I talk about the seen and the unseen, I pull a lot from when I'm rested, as I was saying before, how Ian started us out. Some of my best writing and best images that have been communicated to me over years or decades that have had the most impact on folks I work with have come from a state of rest, of meditation, and me sketching. And they never, thank goodness I have a digital artist, because if you would see what my sketches look like, I have a book right above my desk here to sketch. They're crazy, but somebody always makes them look pretty. So how do you pull from that? Think about the writers, the prolific poets or playwrights or musicians, right? The artists that make beautiful things, they have to get into a headspace, right? For some things, but a lot of times they go away to get away from it all so they can have a full-bodied experience, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, to get at their best work. And then the 7th direction is the inward direction. And we talk about it being the shortest physical distance, but sometimes it's the longest to travel in terms of how do I get comfortable? Can I really go back and look? Can Ian and I have shared discussions where we have areas of agreement and solidarity with spirit falling out of our eyes, and somewhere we're like, I don't know, let's think about that, where there may be more tension, but it's a respectful and healthy visit that we have to sort of try to tinker and figure things out. And then if you look at the 4 directions, the medicine wheel that I have, there you go. As a responsive evaluator, how do we come in and not be extractive? So if you think about what we do to non-humans, do we pick all the berries from the blackberry bush, or do we leave some for the critters? Are we tapping all the trees or just a few of them because we know we only need this much and give away this much? Do we really need to harvest 4 deer, or is 1 enough to feed ourselves and our neighbors? So the reason I talk about extractive method and having things in balance is when we come in, a lot of times, evaluators are judgy, but how do we write down things that are working? For Indigenous populations, LGBTQ two-spirit, and other marginalized or underrepresented populations, we can be powerful with them. We can come in the Eastern door and say, what's working here? Help me learn. Let me watch and observe and listen. Observing and watching is a highly regarded Western scientific skill that I think we don't use enough. I don't throw everything out that's Western, because there are some things that are very beautiful. And today is a testimony of allies that we have everywhere, and ways, good medicine that we can carry in our bundle that work. In the Southern door, how do we say, well, this isn't published, it's only anecdotal? We have to honor the lived experiences. Colonization has made people die, in the settler state, or not feel comfortable in academic spaces. Part of the work that we're trying to do here today, and that I continue to try to do as long as I have breath, is meet people where they're at and make them feel comfortable in part of that circle. And so that means I have to know about Ian's origin story, or May's origin story, or whomever, might be on here, or that I meet. Then we can sort of braid that together and figure out how to build on strong things. Again, the Western door, it's okay if there's challenges. My elders tell me it's not good or bad, it just is. It's teaching us something. What are we taking from this? And how do we reflect and sort of, keep our composure to sort of figure out, a bigger plan? And then again, wisdom. How do we make more wisdom in our work instead of just producing more information? I'm going to say that again. That's really important. How do we make more wisdom in our work and not just produce more information? Wisdom means that it's timeless. It's something that your grandma, your grandpa, your ancestors gave to you. All right. What's next, Ian?
So now I'm thinking about this practically. If you think about how has this medicine wheel influenced the way that you practically do evaluation, bringing it down to, conducting evaluations, what do you do differently?
Okay, I will give an example. Eastern door, building relations and sharing strengths. When I start a new project, I bring tobacco and I give a tobacco pouch. Tobacco was the first medicine that was given to us to remind us we're caretakers, not owners of things. So with the words and the medicine wheel or the teachings that I get, I'm remembering the original teachings, the fact that my community is trusting me not to use these in a bad way, and that I'm going into somebody's place, it's sort of like the Nan Wepahania model, which talks about by us, with us, for us. Were you invited in, or are you just saying, I'm here because I'm hired, deal with it? We know how these things go. And so if you don't have tobacco, you might bring homemade candy or caramels or something. You know what I'm saying? Just to say, here's a piece of me. We're going to have this exchange, and being a good relative, Wilit Nialagomati, being a good relative. And that's, part of the human existence. So that's one way I apply it. The Southern door, what are the theories and methods that are used here? So I'm, for instance, doing an evaluation with a University of Wisconsin-Madison, and we have 2 of our tribal colleges and universities involved, and 2 different tribes. One is Menominee Nation and one is they're Ojibwe. And so the Ojibwe or Anishinaabe is what they say, theory or ways, their elders and their language and the way they frame things may be a bit different than Menominee. So I don't just want to talk to the people on the project. I want to talk to their elders. I want to talk to their linguists. I want to talk to the humans. So tell me what it's like here. Tell me, are there theories and methods? Western door, we always put in pauses. We say this evaluation plan or data collection plan is a living document. So we're writing down what we're doing, but if we have to change it, we'll change it. And we feel like that's natural and that's what you should do. You adjust. You have plans about how you might discipline your children or how you might take a family vacation, but you have to be able to say, hey, we're together, let's pivot, okay? It's sort of the same thing. And I call myself a blue collar scholar with this stuff. I have a paper on this as well that will make sure we get uploaded into the system, into our folder so folks can see it. We have a case study. Carolee Dodge Francis and I put together an article. We have a case study on how you apply this wheel. And then the Northern Door Wisdom, how do we write down what's working and then can we scale it up? We have also been trying very hard to work with our projects to say, how do we build in funds so that we can disseminate and visit about, not just publish, we want them published because we're so rarely seen in the literature, that we help folks publish. And then we say, well, let's take it on the road, even if it's only to 1 or 2 conferences, or even if it's just local to the community. We make sure, I think we forget about that at the end. We're like, project's done, see ya. But be able to pause and take that out on the road and have thoughtful discussions is really important. So those are some of the ways practically I apply it.
I'm going to hand over to May in a minute on the questions and answers. And please do, if you've got questions in the chat, do put them in the chat for May to work with. But just one thing, I mean, we, a group of us, partly in the academy, partly not, have been trying to reflect on decolonization in relation to our work around evaluation systems, national evaluation systems in government, etc. And one of the things that's really pushed us to think about is how can we increase the role of users and communities in the systems. You know, these evaluation that the systems are often driven by national departments, but they obviously come with their own perspectives, their own way of looking at the interventions they support, the own way they look at policies. And of course, evaluations do consult with people, but the power is very much with the national department. So trying to think about how we can change that power balance. So the power is much more with how users perceive interventions, how users see the outcomes, how users would like them to change. And similarly in monitoring systems, bringing the user voice much more strongly. But with that, I want to hand over to May to deal with any questions and answers, and we can follow up if there are gaps, but hand over to May.
Thank you both very much. Let's get straight in. Is there, if anybody is urgently burning to ask a question, it would help if you took down the slide, Ian or Nikki, so that I can see all the participants clearly. Adinda asks, I wonder how and if it can be actually used by evaluators from different cultures and backgrounds. If I, for instance, would be entitled and able to use it in my evaluation practice, not being from your cultural background and therefore having to interpret it. So how can that be used in that different cultural context? Nikki?
Well, I will put Nan Wepahenya's paper in here from 2019. First of all, I see something about frameworks or roadmaps. Nan is like the be all end all. She works a lot with Kate McKeag. So Nan is Maori, and she is I consider my elder sister. And Kate McKeag is non-Indigenous, and they work together on this. And so look up Kate and Nan's work. It's great. And like I said, I'll put it in the chat. Are you invited in, or are you told by whoever the funder is, you're doing the national evaluation or you're assigned? So I sort of, the positionality of it all, and is the community asking you in, or is the funder telling you have to go in? So that's the first thing that I sort of think about. The second thing is something that I learned very well from the Canadian context is first voice. And I know that there's literature out there for first voice. And so it's important that whether I'm working in a community in my home state, a neighboring state, I get work up in Canada and other Indigenous contexts, that I say, hey, Larry Bremner from Canada, past president of Canadian Eval Society, do you want to work on this project? Or Kim Vanderwoord, if I'm up in Canada. This is the company that has approached me. What do you know about them? Do you want to be an advisor or work on the project? I literally take first voice and apply it to myself, even though I'm Indigenous. Whose neighborhood are you in? Okay, so that's the first thing. If you're not first voice, it is my personal and professional belief that you need to have a community member working with you, not volunteering, that is like a co-lead with you. You might know evaluation, but you don't know the language and you don't know the community. And I think we really need to decolonize, the way that we're doing that work. I also think if there's any funders on here, you can't put DEI or equity or Indigenous or culturally responsive or fill in the blank on, or decolonizing evaluation on a proposal, a RFP, just add those words in, but not change the budget. It takes probably double the time, double the people, double the money. So I'm really pleading, I'm trying to get upstream. Don't come in if you don't have the resources. And I mean, it takes time. If you're brand new, think about it. It takes time to make a new friend, right? So it's going to take time for folks to trust you. And then when you have the history that the Western society has with working with Indigenous people, it's a lot, so come in knowing your stuff, knowing some stuff, but also having that cultural and academic humility to say, I know that work was done that was harmful, but I came in and I did this, and this. We're trying to have an advisory group. We have a co-PI or however that is, and we have time. We don't have to rush us, and we can take time to get to know each other. And we can take time to do this evaluation, and we can take time to figure out who owns the data in those agreements, and how we're going to use the data in a way that helps you and the funder in that order. I hope that was helpful.
Veronica, I think you've got a follow-up question that fits here. Would you like to unmute Veronica Felkes?
Yeah, that was actually just a comment. If anyone is interested in more exactly creating the content and materials, and I'm so very thankful to EES, which I still consider my home as an ex-board member, to giving the space for this and for this conversation. And Nikki, it's amazing to listen to you. One thing that for me as a white European that kind of gave me that content that you created with Vagele is that I reflect upon it from my perspective of being placed within Europe. So my genuity is not in trying to apply some indigenous wisdom that is far away from me, like from Canada or Australia or Turtle Island, but more to really think on which land I am. So for me, Eastern Europe being torn apart by the forced transportations, by the fear and the different ideologies of fascism and Sovietism, and how this land was torn apart, and how the people here were building their resilience through generations, and the survival of them is something that kind of builds up my genuinity and my story here. So thank you so much for this, and I hope this comment also kind of contributes to this question.
Thank you, Veronica. Taruna, would you like to ask your question? Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, May. So I just wanted to clarify with Nikki. Obviously, she said that we should partner with people where they're available. But when we hear about this indigenous methods for evaluation, say, what would you say the evaluation community's role is? Is it to respect these methodologies so when we come across them, or would you say adopt them? So obviously, Colin and I, we have adopted Western methodologies for such a long time. Are you advocating? I mean, I know you're not actively doing it, but should we be adopting them?
Thank you for the question. I wouldn't use the word adopting. If you know about the 60s scoop and how they broke up families, indigenous families, and gave them to white families, that's a very triggering term that you might not know about. I also, in the context of colonization and settler state, adopting, or whatever synonym word you might use, might be looked at as cultural appropriation. I go back to first voice. You need to be doing this work by, with, and for indigenous people. And so that means you don't, the solo ride is over. And this is my opinion. Thank you for asking. But we need to, non-indigenous people need to fund and make room for the rematriation of evaluation. You know, we're here. There's plenty of indigenous evaluators that are out there. You can be asking critical questions. I just sent you Kate McKeag's paper, White Privilege in the Decolonization Work and Evaluation Needed to Support. I think somebody should fund Kate and peers like her, Andre Lisa Belzer. There's lots of non-indigenous folks who know how to work appropriately with First Nations, Métis, Inuit, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, Aboriginal, Maori, the whole nine, you know, indigenous peoples. And, you know, that in the global North and South, that also includes, you know, Central and South America, you know, African indigeneity to Africa. It's a big group of people, not just the traditional North American natives, indigenous people, as you would think. That's something that I'm still learning about as well. So I would ask critical questions. I would fund safe allies who have proven and continue to keep our trust in this decolonization work. And I would start asking critical questions like where, you know, if you know you're working on decolonization or LGBTQ topics or fill in the blank, brown folks of any kind, marginalized folks, right? Disabled folks, then you need to have that expert paid and working with you, because those are the first voice people. And so I would say there's a lot of, remember on my slide when I said the shortest physical distance inside is sometimes the longest journey, and it should be a lifelong journey. We're learning about ourselves. The first thing you can do is, what is your origin story? Tell me your origin story. Tell me where you came from, what you learned, and how you privileged because of that. That's the start of a conversation. And it can be, and it's a beautiful start of a friendship. As Ian and I are, you know, I can't say enough, and I won't divulge our conversations, may you as well. We've really come to know each other as humans, but part of that is sharing what we're nervous and scared about and vulnerable with, but knowing that you have a comrade, an ally that will hold a safe space for you. So the first step isn't out, what should we do and adopt it? It's in. Hi, Rebecca.
I think we're going to have to leave it there. I'm so pleased to have had the honor of listening to this and to sharing it for you. Nikki, Ian, do you want to say a couple of last words?
So let me
Go ahead, Ian, please.
So one thing for me, this decolonization aspect is not just about how one thinks about the colonizers and traditional societies. It's about how the powerful have appropriated the resources of the state and internationally to reinforce their power and their privilege. So we need to think of it with a class dimension. We need to think of it, from a gender dimension, etc., etc. And the task which awaits us in relation to the polycrisis facing us is to move over from that domination towards a new society which is built on the experiences of ordinary people, and making a life that is viable for ordinary people, not just sucking up riches to the 0.1%.
Thank you. Well, we'll call it a day. Thank you again, and we'll meet again. We will continue. This is a discussion that needs to be continued. Watch this space. Thank you. Have a lovely rest of the afternoon, everybody, or evening or morning, or wherever you are. Bye.
Thank you.